Hello everyone, once again welcome to our physics class. Hope you all are fine over there. Children, in the previous session we had discussed about torque acting on a rigid body, and we also derived an expression for the torque. Today let's discuss about equilibrium of a rigid body, and also let's have a look on the mechanical advantage. So let's get started with today's session. So let's continue with our lesson, System of Particles and Rotational Motion. Today we are going to discuss equilibrium of a rigid body. So what do you mean by equilibrium? See, a rigid body can be considered in an equilibrium state if it has both rotational and mechanical equilibrium. Okay, that means rotational and translational equilibrium. So a body is regarded, a rigid body can be considered in equilibrium, in mechanical equilibrium, if it has both translational equilibrium and rotational equilibrium. A force changes the translational state of the motion of rigid body. That is, it changes the total linear momentum. You know that whenever external forces apply to a rigid body, its momentum will change. A torque changes the rotational state of the motion of a rigid body. It changes the total angular momentum of the body. So in the place of force, that means instead of force, if we apply a torque on a rigid body, the total angular momentum of the rigid body is changed. A rigid body is said to be in mechanical equilibrium if both its linear momentum and angular momentum are not changing with respect to time. That means the total force should be zero, total torque acting on that rigid body must be zero. Why? If total force is zero, the body will be in translational equilibrium. That means the total linear momentum of the object will not change. And if total torque acting on the object or rigid body is zero, then the body will be in rotational equilibrium. That means the total angular momentum of the rigid body won't change with respect to time. Okay, on the screen you can see two figures, and one represents the rotational equilibrium condition and this figure represents the translational equilibrium condition. Here there is a rod, isn't it? And two forces are acting on the rod. This force is acting in the downward direction and this force is acting in the downward direction. So the net force is 2F. But what about the torque? Net torque is 0, because only two equal and opposite forces constitute a couple, and moment of that couple produces a torque. So if a torque is to be developed, there must be two equal and opposite forces. Here two forces are there and two equal forces are there, but they are not opposite forces. Both the forces are acting along the same direction. Both are acting downwards. So it will not constitute a torque. So if torque is zero, body will be in rotational equilibrium. Now consider this situation. Here on one end of the rigid body, force is acting in the downward direction, and on the opposite end, force is acting in the opposite direction. So here two equal and opposite forces are there. These two equal and opposite forces give rise to torque. So there will be a net torque. But at the same time, what will be the total force? Total force will be zero, because this force is acting in the downward direction and this force is acting in the upward direction. So two equal and opposite forces will cancel each other. Hence, the translational force or the linear force, total force will be 0. And if total force is 0, the body will be in translational equilibrium. So these are the two conditions of rotational and translational equilibrium. Okay. Now, a pair of equal and opposite forces with different lines of action is known as couple or torque. A couple produces rotation without translation. When a couple is acting on a rigid body, that body will rotate without any linear motion. Example, when you open the lid of a jar, you apply couple on it. Okay. Now there is an important derivation in this chapter that is related to mechanical advantage. And why do we call that derivation as mechanical advantage? That you will understand towards the end of this session. Okay, so for that we need to consider this figure as shown here. So consider a lever pivoted at some origin. That means that origin point is considered as the fulcrum. So this is the fulcrum. Okay, fulcrum. This is the origin. This point can be considered as origin, and this can be considered as our lever. This lever is pivoted. Lever means this lever. Okay, don't get confused between our biological lever. This is the lever. So consider the lever which is pivoted or fixed at some point, and that fixed point is known as fulcrum. And consider this lever is in mechanical equilibrium. Okay, now let F1 and F2 be the forces acting at A and B. So this is the end A, this is the end B. F1 and F2 are the forces acting at the points A and B. Let R be the reaction of the support at the fulcrum. Okay, so this fulcrum will offer some reaction force. Let that reaction force be R. Okay, children, let me mark R here. Okay, so R is the reaction force offered by the fulcrum. Now, for translational equilibrium, what is the condition? For translational equilibrium, condition is total force should be 0. So here, what are the total forces acting on that system? The total forces are F1, F2 and the reaction force. These are the total forces acting on the lever. Okay, and here we can apply the sign convention. Forces acting in the downward direction can be taken as negative. Forces acting on the upward direction can be taken as positive. So here reaction force is acting in the upward direction, so that is positive, and the F1, F2 forces are acting in the downward direction, so that can be taken as negative. So this is the sum of, or this is the total force acting on the system, and the total force acting on the system should be 0. Then the object will be in translational equilibrium. And we can rearrange this expression, so you can write it as R is equal to F1 plus F2. Let this be our equation number 1. Okay, now for rotational equilibrium, what is the condition? So this is, we got this relation from the condition for translational equilibrium. And for rotational equilibrium, what is the condition? For rotational equilibrium, total torque must be 0. Okay, total torque must be 0. So here, how will you find out the total torque? Two torques are acting here. That is, this object, that means the end A is situated at a distance of d1 from the point of rotation. So the torque acting at the point A or at the end A will be equal to force into perpendicular distance from the point of rotation. So, or from the fixed point. So here, what is the force acting at the point A? That is F1. And what is the perpendicular distance of that force from the fixed point? That means from the fulcrum. This is the perpendicular distance, and that perpendicular distance is equal to d1. Okay, so the torque acting at the point A is F1 into d1. Okay, then what is the force or the torque acting at the point B? So the torque acting at the point B, again you can use the equation force into perpendicular distance. Force acting at the end B will be F2, and the perpendicular distance of F2 from the fixed axis, this is a perpendicular distance, and that is equal to D2. Okay, so this is the torque acting at the point B. And here again we can apply the sign convention. We know F1 is negative because it is acting in the downward direction. And if we consider fulcrum as the origin, all the measurements taken to the left side of origin is taken as negative. So here D1 is measured to the right of fulcrum, so D1 is negative. And here F2 is negative, but at the same time D2 is measured to the right of fulcrum, so it can be taken as positive. So torque acting at the point A will be minus F1 into minus D1, that is F1 D1, and torque acting at the point B will be minus F2 into D2, that is minus F2 D2. And what is the condition for rotational equilibrium? Sum of these two torques must be 0, that is F1 D1 minus F2 D2 is equal to 0, or F1 D1 equal to F2 D2. Let this be our equation number 2. And in the case of lever, F1, this force F1 is used to lift some weight. Hence, F1 is called load. So that is written here. Hence, F1 is called load because the force F1 is used to lift some weight, and its distance from the fulcrum, that is D1, can be considered as load arm. So that is why D1 is written as or considered as load arm. Okay, so F1 is the force used to lift some weight. Hence, F1 is called load. And the distance of F1 from the fulcrum is D1. And that D1 is known as or is called load arm. Similarly, F2. F2 force is regarded as the effort. That means the force that we are applying in order to lift the weight. Okay, so F2 is the effort applied to lift the load, and the distance of F2 from the fulcrum, that means this distance, is called the effort arm. That means the distance D2 is called the effort arm. Distance D1 is the load arm. Okay, so D1 into F1. Here we have a relation F1 into D1. So this F1 into D1 can be written as load arm into load, isn't it? F1 is the load and D1 is the load arm. Similarly, equal to F2. F2 is the effort. So we can write effort here. Effort into D2 is the effort arm. Okay, so D2 can be written as effort arm. Effort into effort arm. So we got a relation load into load arm is equal to effort into effort arm. So this expression expresses the principle of moments for a lever. Principle of moments for a lever. Okay, then the ratio F1 by F2 is called mechanical advantage. So what is F1 by F2? We got the relation F1 D1 equal to F2 D2. So F1 by F2 is equal to D2 by D1. This ratio F1 by F2 is called mechanical advantage. Okay, the ratio F1 by F2 is called mechanical advantage. High value of mechanical advantage means that a small effort can be used to lift a large load, isn't it? If mechanical advantage is high, it means F1 should be greater than F2. And what is F1? F1 is the load. So load may be high, the weight of the load may be more, and F2 is less. So in order to lift a very large weight, or in order to lift a large load, very small effort is required. So that is a mechanical advantage. If we want to apply a very small effort to lift a very large load, that means we are applying a very small force to apply a very large load. So that is advantageous to us. So hence we consider this condition as mechanical advantage. That means if mechanical advantage is more, it means a small effort can be used to lift a large load. Examples for this lever system is seesaw, beam balance. All are examples for such a lever system. Okay. So here it is again explained, mechanical advantage greater than 1 means a small effort can be used to lift a large load. Next, let's discuss about center of gravity. So what do you mean by center of gravity? Center of gravity of a body is that point where the total gravitational torque on the body is 0. Okay, so center of gravity is a point where the total gravitational torque is 0. It is that point through which the net gravitational force acts. Torque is 0, but gravitational force will act. And also, center of gravity of a body may not be same as its center of mass. Okay, so here you can see this animal is balancing a ball. Okay, so he is balancing that ball on the center of gravity. The center of gravity of the body coincides with the center of mass in uniform gravity or gravity free space. Okay, so center of gravity is not same as that of the center of mass. It will not coincide with the center of mass in ordinary or in real situations. So center of gravity can coincide with the center of mass in one condition, that means in uniform gravity or gravity free space. Under such situation, center of gravity coincides with the center of mass. And if G varies from part to part of the body, then the center of gravity and center of mass will not coincide. So, you know, the variation of G from part to part of a body takes place only if the body is very, very large. Okay, so for a body of very large dimensions, the center of gravity may not be same with or may not be same as its center of mass. That is, center of gravity does not coincide with the center of mass if the body is very large. Okay, body is very, very small. The value of acceleration due to gravity is same for its different parts. In this situation, center of gravity of the body coincides with the center of mass. Okay, so that's about center of gravity. Then what do you mean by moment of inertia? Moment of inertia is analog of mass in rotational motion. Okay, so whatever role is played by mass in a linear motion, same role is played by moment of inertia in rotational motion. See, a body at rest cannot rotate by itself. If we want to rotate that body, we need to apply some force, isn't it? If we want to rotate the fan, we need to apply some force in the form of electrical energy, or if you just turn that fan with the help of a rod, then also the fan will rotate. But at the same time, a body in uniform rotation cannot stop by itself, isn't it? If you want to stop the rotation of the fan, if you want to make that fan stop the rotation, we need to apply a force. Okay, so a body at rest cannot rotate by itself. A body in uniform motion cannot stop by itself. So this inability of the body is called rotational inertia. The body does not want to change its state. So this inability of a material body is called rotational inertia. It depends on the mass of the body and axis of rotation. Actually, distance from the axis of rotation. Okay, so moment of inertia about a given axis of rotation. resist a change in its rotational motion. The body does not want to accept that change. It always resists that change, just like our inertia. Now, it can be regarded as a measure of rotational inertia of the body. Okay, it is a measure of way in which different parts of the body are distributed at different distances from the axis. The moment of inertia of a rigid body depends upon mass of the body, its shape and size, distribution of mass about the axis of rotation, position and orientation of the axis of rotation. Okay, so the moment of inertia depends upon the following factors: mass of the body, shape and size of the body, distribution of mass about the axis of rotation, how the particles are distributed about the axis, then the position and orientation of the axis of rotation. Also, moment of inertia depends upon the radius of gyration of the body about an axis. Okay, and what is the formula to find out moment of inertia? So the formula to find out moment of inertia is given in this slide, that is I is equal to MI/RI square, where M is the mass and R is the distance of the body from the axis of rotation. And what is the significance of this expression? Let us derive this expression in the next slide. So here, consider a rigid body like this. Okay, and this rigid body is rotating about this axis AB. Now, consider some masses inside this rigid body, any particles. So let M1 be the mass of this particle, let M2 be the mass of this particle, let M3 be the mass of this particle, and let this particle be situated at a distance of R1 from the axis of rotation AB. Let this particle be situated at a distance of R2 from the axis of rotation. Let this particle be situated at a distance of R3 from the axis of rotation. Then, what will be the moment of inertia of these particles, or what will be the total moment of inertia? Total moment of inertia will be moment of inertia of particle of mass M1 plus moment of inertia of particle of mass M2 plus moment of inertia of particle of mass M3. And we know the moment of inertia of the particle is mr square. This is the equation to find out moment of inertia of a particle. So here we can write for the first particle moment of inertia is m1 r1 square. For the second particle moment of inertia is m2 r2 square. For the third particle moment of inertia is m3 r3 square. Okay, so the total moment of inertia will be the sum of all these moments of inertia, and if there are n particles, we can just generalize this expression like this: plus mn rn square. And this expression can be simplified like this: sigma I is equal to 1 to n mi ri square. Okay, sigma I is equal to 1 to n m I ri square. Sigma represents the summation. So this expression indicates the total moment of inertia of a rigid body. Total moment of inertia of a rigid body is the sum of moments of inertia of all the particles present inside the rigid body. Okay.